Morning, all. My name is, I'm a board member of Donald Harris, serving as the interim chair today for our vice chair, Aaron Benham, who is on a well-deserved. You all please rise for a pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands,
Public participation, as a board member.
Good to members of the public. Signed up this morning. The first speaker is Ashley Marmore, and the second speaker is Sarah.
Good morning.
We have 3 minutes.
My name is Kathy Marber. I have been a certified teacher in Connecticut for the past 17 years. I'm the parent of a child with dyslexia and a member of Decoding Dyslexia Connecticut. The Connecticut State Department of Education in the December email to stakeholders from its chief of staff, Ms. Stephan, stated that it has not delivered robust compliance measures, audit procedures, and therefore has not verified education preparation programs compliance with dyslexia-specific legislation, despite legislatively mandated requirements. We thank Ms. Stephan and the CSDE for this transparent email, as we have not known what has not been done. We request this board to ensure that any future action by the CSDE develop the compliance measures and audit procedures to align with the legislator's intent, dyslexia task force recommendations, and legislation. We also request that the co-chairs of the dyslexia task force work in partnership with CSDE and any external experts. This type of partnership will allow for continuity between legislation and development of the initiative. I want to give you a few examples of why an audit of education preparation program is necessary and needed. My own experience and initial preparation did not fully prepare me to teach students who qualify for special education with specific learning disabilities. What I've seen in our local schools mirrored my own preparation, wherein newly certified teachers do not have the knowledge and skills to meet the needs of students with dyslexia, nor have they had a practical. Decoding Dyslexia Connecticut has a meeting scheduled with the commissioner and staff this afternoon. We hope to learn more about CSDE's efforts to 1, leverage resources, 2, seek external experts, 3, assess capacity to support this work, and 4, provide clarity regarding anticipated timelines, roles of internal and external partners, and opportunities for stakeholders engagement. As we have not had any updates since Ms. Stephan's email of September 18th. I leave the board and CSDE staff with this question from Kareem Weaver. Do we have the political will and the moral courage and fortitude to use literacy as a vehicle to include all? I hope for Connecticut the answer is yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And doing it at 189 Columbia Road and my name is Karen Leandis. I am speaking today as a teacher, a parent of a student with dyslexia, a member of Decoding Dyslexia CT, and someone who cares deeply about how educators are preparing them. I provided public comment last month before this board after watching the meeting that a comment made by the commissioner resonated with me and with many individuals in our community. Commissioner Russell Tucker commented that if one special education student out of the 94,174 in the state is not receiving the services that they are entitled to, that is one too many. We are here to advise you that there are many students with dyslexia that are not receiving a free and appropriate education in Connecticut. We want you to be aware of the hundreds of pieces of testimonies provided by the stakeholders over the years in support of dyslexia legislation. These testimonies publicly on file with the Connecticut General Assembly outline the pervasive and systematic failures of students with dyslexia are facing in Connecticut. In addition, after the commissioner's comments, the Decoding Dyslexia CT launched a survey asking stakeholders for feedback regarding the continued failures within the state regarding students with dyslexia. The survey ran for only 14 days. However, we received over 50 responses from a wide variety of towns across Connecticut and comments from various stakeholders. Responses show decades of failure with overarching themes running throughout: systematic delays and failures and resistance, inadequate services and instruction, adversarial and costly advocacy, lack of educator expertise and training, accountability, and legal violations. Survey responses are attached to this public comment submission. We encourage you to read each and every one of these responses, as each response represents a child who has been failed by the system. The State Board of Education needs to fully implement the recommendations of the task force, including implementing compliance measures, audit procedures, and verification of educator preparation programs to ensure accountability and effectiveness. Thank you.
We have no executive session today. Next on our agenda is the consideration of our January 14th minutes. Can I get a motion? Moved and seconded. Any edits, corrections? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is so.
Aye.
Thank you. For the report of the chair, send me a detailed report that I will do at this time. Gladys, Kristen Record, Aaron Benham attended the February NASB member exchange meeting. Kristen Record, Gladys, and Paula Gilberto are also involved with the HQ IM group. Additionally, Kristen participated in the Education Summit last month held at the state capitol, and you'll hear some more from Kristen and Paula a little bit later in our meeting. Congratulations goes out to Dr. Gladys Labor, or who's in Chicago right now, being inducted to the multilingual education Hall of Fame class of 2026. Congratulations. Notice went out to all districts about applications for student board members for the 2026-27 school year. And as a point of personal privilege, I'm going to point out congratulations to our own former deputy commissioner, Debbie Nesmith, who was just recently appointed, I believe, on February 1st. He is the new CEO of the CREC system. Congratulations, Debbie.
Mr. Harris, if I may.
Yeah.
Can you have Ms. Record actually talk about her participation on the panel she served?
I'd be happy to. Thank you for that opportunity. I was really excited to be invited to participate in the 2026 Connecticut Education Issues Summit. It was held at the Capitol building. It was co-sponsored by CAVE and CASP, CEA and AFT. It was a wonderful morning. It was directed specifically at legislators and members of local boards of education to talk about all kinds of issues related to the state of education and K-12 systems and beyond here in Connecticut. I participated in a panel discussion about the educator workforce needs and issues, specifically around the educator pipeline and educator working conditions. There's also a panel discussion about improving educational outcomes. We had Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, as well as our former commissioner and former secretary of education, Miguel Cardona, speak to us in two different parts of the sections. And we also had panel discussions about job protection needs for educators in the workplace. So it was a really informative morning. A lot of engaged panelists and participants. Really important questions were asked, and I was very grateful to see many legislators and members of local boards of education on it. So thank you for anyone who attended, and I was very pleased with the opportunity.
Thank you. And time for committee reports, academic standards and assessments. Paul.
So we met on January 13th and we gave an update. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 10th. And I would just encourage the board, if they have anything relating to academic standards, especially if they'd like to come before the committee for discussions, to please let Dr. Hughes, Irene Parisi, or myself know, so that we can plan an agenda that's reflective of what the board would want to learn about for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Accountability and support.
Accountability and support met last week on Wednesday. We heard two reports from two different schools on their accountability and support corrective action plan. Meeting expanded for accountability and support, and we reconvened.
Finance, audit, and budget committee that I chair. We have not met. We only and our next meeting is February 24th. But again, I'm going to offer up. Thank you, Keith Martin, who has done a great job in keeping that department intact. Okay. Legislation and policy development.
Thank you, sir. We started our January 14 meeting on the presentation from Fran Rubinowitz from CAPS, from Miguel Cardona, from the Cardona Solutions, and from Superintendent Herbert from CESL on initiatives that they're working on with statewide college and career pathways. They shared they look forward to working with the CSDE on this initiative, and we will be hearing from people today and to what this discussion is. We also heard from our Connecticut Education Preparation and Certification Board. They presented on their work, and we will be actions later. Each at 1 o'clock in May. Okay, always in.
Connecticut PTAC and Career System Board. Information is in your supplemental folder, plus there's a video. We are also happy to notice that Anita Fudge and Alexandra Field, students from Oliver Walcott Technical School, were selected as speakers in the 2026 LEAD conference being held later this month in Washington, Congratulations to those students. I'm sorry.
With a stroke of a pen, a new pathway to education and the workforce is created. It's a landmark partnership in Connecticut between technical high schools and community colleges.
Providing you a clear pathway for how to, through your experience at CTEX and at CT State, earn a post-secondary degree or certificate through CT State at a low or no cost.
The partners call this a game changer, not just for students, but the local economy. They point to generational shortages across all sectors in the state.
From culinary to manufacturing to healthcare and beyond, right? And the only way for the state of Connecticut to truly move that needle is through our CTEX and CT State.
While in high school, students enrolled in the program will earn college credit. Each will be issued a college ID, giving them access to a host of opportunities.
Our library, our tutoring services, our advising, our mental health and wellness support.
While the program is not new in the state, it continues to build on its success. 3 years ago, 17,552 students earned college credits through dual credit courses at other colleges and universities right here in Connecticut.
This past year, that number rose to 24,718. That's over 7,000 more students participating in dual credit courses.
An equation these educators are hoping will equal success. Reporting for News 8, I'm Ken Houston.
Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, Dr. John.
Madam Commissioner, colleagues, board members, guests, and friends. And from our system standpoint, as we know, the legislative session started last week. So, college as it relates to the constitution. Legislative agenda, we recognize that it's a short session. States dealing with election. That we really talk about the 30 minutes happening in this department. Really, it's part of are up to standard for standard. Absolutely, national standard. Understand, HR1, any changes to the expects, they putting higher education, sure that whatever policy that is federal, that we're finally support, they also need to secure more funding.
As we put them in fall to
Thank you. So, as you mentioned in Aaron's report, we participated in the NASI Member of Change last Monday. We received a federal update on legislation and providing the budget situation at the national level. We also had time to spend in area groups. I wanted to give Aaron a shout out as he has been reappointed in the Northeast area director for NASB. So congratulations. So we were able to spend some time with fellow board members from the Northeast region. Later this afternoon, myself and Paula and hopefully Gladys also will be meeting with NASB's CEO, Paula Samaria. We're going to be talking with him about our HQIM initiatives here about how NASB can leverage what we're doing in our state to help guide what's going on in other states in that area. Advanced. Both use, we of course engaged them. We wanted to make sure that we were and are prepared this afternoon at 3 o'clock to share all that the State Department that is with respect to high quality instructional materials. Just as a general reminder to the board, this is one of the strategic priorities in the state for the next 5 years. Around facilitating curriculum training. And so I want to acknowledge the staff as well as partnership with the board, and we are working on the safety staff.
Finally, on the committee reports, start. Just a reminder that there is a full sport and flower and flyers in your supplemental. Committee first report of the commissioner. Please the update.
Thank you very much, and good morning to my members and those in our audience, and to Vice Chair Benham, who is on screen. So she's with us and she's got the ability to weigh in. Good morning to all. My report, the Commissioner's report, is in the supplemental packet, and as usual, key activities are laid out on the relevant board priorities. Thank you, Paula, for reminding us of those priorities. And they're actually the deck that you have. I put it there again as a reminder of the priorities of the state board of education that we're working to make sure we're doing on a daily basis in the work that we're doing, ensuring that our students are very light and working on school. The other reminder in your packet that we have is the underpinnings of the state board comprehensive plan driven by our data transparency and unlocking lifelong potential. We have those priority areas also that the agency is working on, and you can certainly take a look at that. We're calling out today there, and we'll talk about some priorities and updates here, but I also want to point out improving outcomes for all students. Is one of those strategic focus areas. This is increasing access and opportunities for students with disabilities and those with unique needs. And we're continuing to do that work. As we sat last week and listened to last month to the WestEd presentation on the work that we're doing to make sure that we are indeed working on systemic changes, make sure that we can indeed achieve that goal. On slide 4 of your deck, we have updated enrollment and staff data. And I think that Ajit Gopalakrishnan is in the room. And Ajit, if you can just quickly share with us, I always talk about a 508-402 number. It just rolls off the tongue. Well, I got to learn a new number now because we have updated number. I always say I use that number that I got to change the number. So I just wanted Ajit to just very briefly go through the changes that we have on the thing that I present everywhere, because understanding our education landscape in Connecticut.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, board members. So as you can see, the enrollment number now is 497,764. It's a decline from the prior year of about 2.1% in a single year. That's the second largest single year decline that we've seen. The only other time was a COVID year. And we have about 10,600 fewer students this year than last year. And we are, there may have been another year in like the early 90s, maybe, when it was below 500,000, we're supposed to open into that. And that was before we had SACIDs and we were doing that. So that's kind of the big change. In terms of student groups, Students eligible for free meals showed the biggest decline, single year decline of almost 5%. It's still greater than what we had in 21-22, but it's a single year decline of about 9,500 fewer students among those eligible for free meals. English learner group also actually saw a decline, and that's a first that we've seen in our memory, declining from about 57,500 to like 55,000. So a little over 2,000 students, or almost 4% single year decline. Students with disabilities did increase slightly. So that's one group that increased slightly less than 1%, about 800 more students pre-K through 12 that we see. When we look at the Alliance districts, all but 2 Alliance districts have had declines. So there's 2, Vernon and Winchester, that had a slight increase, but everybody else had declines. Just to give you some numbers here, New Haven saw almost 1,000 fewer students this year than last year. Hartford about 900 fewer, Stanford a little over 800, Bridgeport around 650 fewer students, and Danbury over 500, a little 500 fewer students this year. Those are the general numbers that we're seeing in the Alliance district. The one district to see the largest increase was actually CTEX. And they had over 300 more students this year than last year. When we look move that we into effect, and some students get waivers. Overall, the students who were born seem to be enrolling, but we still have to poke into it and figure this out. Just briefly, Commissioner, did you want me to mention staff as well?
Yes.
Okay. So on the staff side, you know, the overall capacity last year to this year actually grew a little bit, like about 1% when you add both certified and non-certified staff. But certified staff did show a slight decline. It's the non-certified staff that we're seeing an increase. So for example, the general education teachers, which are like our classroom teachers, and they account for about 35,000 of that 53,000 number that you see there, that declined about a little less than 1%. So about 260 odd fewer teachers. But then when you look on the special education teachers and special education paraprofessionals, that's where you see the increase. So about a 3% increase in special education paraprofessionals, about 400 FTEs. And then special education teachers, a little less than 2%, almost 130 FTEs. So it's sort of shifting from general education to special education, and that's also in line with the student enrollment patterns that we're seeing. So,
I think that's it. We've updated, our dashboard is updated now.
yes, yeah, all the reports will show the new data. And yeah.
A clarifying question. For the staff members, the FTE, are we talking about literally certified, or are we talking about
It's employed FTEs. So FTE is full, in case folks don't know, it's full-time equivalent. So essentially what that means is that 2 people are working half the time. That would be considered 1 FTE. And so when I present the certified staff FTE is actually the truer reflection of capacity.
certified FTE?
That's correct. Such that net is actually a little higher FTE.
You know, if the decrease in the certified FTE related to what is it?
We don't know that. Can't really tell to that level. We do have a vacancy dashboard where we do track what vacancies they have, which is positions that are budgeted that they're actively looking to fill. So we wouldn't know if they changed positions or eliminated positions.
are looking at that, I think, trying to figure it out.
Not to speculate, but that's.
Yeah, it's hard to, I mean, we can only speculate on the why. I think our goal is to really track. The one thing we don't have is 2025 population numbers. So it's hard to say, especially school age population, it's hard to say like, what is the population? So we tend to go back to the birth records and say, how many born, even though that's not perfect, we try to sort of see like 5 years ago, how many born are like, is that close to where the kindergarten enrollment is? So we sort of try to look for that. And it's gotten a little messy with this whole rule change and the waivers being given, but I think we're capturing it in kindergarten, when we account for all this.
But you know what we're talking about, and I believe that it enrollment down across, not just Connecticut. I need to engage in second.
On that point, I know that has also indicated to us that direct certification, so SNAP and those types of program enrollments are also down, because that sort of jives with our prenatal population.
Moving us along on specific activities, and I'm going to have John on deck as well. Connecticut was awarded $154 million in centers Medicare and Medicaid services via CMS to implement a multi-agency rural health transformation program. And Connecticut has the department has a piece of this, but I'll just have John just quickly share with you what we're doing with that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, we were awarded $154 million. In year one, it's a 5-year grant from the Center for Medicare. There are many agencies involved. There are about a dozen, everyone from DHS, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, but also Office of Health Strategies, Yukon Health Center, a number of programs. There are actually 31 different projects in it, and department has one. The focus of this are the rural health districts. So this gives you sort of a snapshot of who we're talking about. There are about 45 or 46 that are targeted by HRSA that are designated as rural on the federal level. So the Connecticut program is building on, or the department's program is building on our behavioral health pilot that we just completed with 7 different districts. So we'll be expanding that, doing school level mental health assessments to see what types of infrastructure they have in place, the types of programs that they're running, how successful they are, and the needs of the city with regard to behavioral health and opportunities for referral. And we'll be layering on top of that a student level behavioral assessment. So we'll be looking at school level, district level, and student level needs and help to develop systems of support for each district. So tailored to each district, what are they needs in terms of developing systems, in addition to working with some of our other partners for the provision of telehealth, behavioral health services. So we're kind of hitting all points.
Thank you, John. So that's under our priority that you say the health. Thank you very much. Moving on to elevating our curriculum frameworks, I just want to point out one initiative for you, and I think Irene is in the room in Connecticut, Curriculum Teacher Leader Fellowship program that we launched. We launched that in October of 2025, and we have 125 leaders. Irene, could you come to the table, please? We have 145 teacher leaders, participants across 60 districts within the state, and very review. So if you can just quickly share on that, that'd be great.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for your support in this project. This is the right professional learning that we're providing to our teacher colleagues, because we really are putting in their hands the opportunity to come to the table locally about curriculum discussion. So we are working with them on the 4-phase structure within our universal design principles, as well as the readiness toolkit to really diagnose where are we what gaps may exist and how might we prioritize that work so that we can get to those outcomes that we want for their teacher colleagues as well as the students. So we had a module last week. It was virtual, would be in person in March, and we're really helping them create that district vision and again, empower them to be the curricular leaders for their district and bring more to the table. Thank you.
Also, that we're working professional learning, providing assistance on assessment and sensible assessments for our districts. You'll hear a little more about that later, but that is happening. And then finally, you saw the segment on technical high school and states or that. It is a partnership working with the agencies on course and career options, and so part of that and reckon those partnerships and pathways for students and participation later. I also this past week, we joined the governor and West Berkeley superintendent, local leaders and community partners at Smith's School in West Berkeley to highlight the $12.5 million investments to expand access to. And you'll hear a little bit more about that with our budget update. But it was great to join with this budget under the governor's proposal. All students in school participating in our school breakfast program, which is free breakfast, ensuring that an additional 164,000 students can start their day with a healthy meal, and we know how important that is. As well as reduced price and lunch fees would be eliminated statewide, giving roughly 13,000 students access to lunch at no cost. To those who already been there. That's where we were. On the screen for the shout-outs for where we've been and what we've been doing. Also, thanks to Irene, the 2026 Connecticut King Governor was named. If you recall, we met and had the previous King Governor attend a board meeting. We would do the same thing. And so with Tessa and hearing from her and her cabinet and the work that they're doing. So we congratulate Tessa for being the new governor. In that, the governor did the state of the state address and for eyes also online. You want to time you so like that. So let's move on to your updates, Hartford, Bridgeport, and the building. Let's start with you. We'll give you an update on where we are with Hartford Public Schools, followed by Dr. Hughes and Dr.
Morning, everyone. I will be very brief this morning, more so than usual. As we see everyone this morning, I will not be brief later on. As a report on Hartford, in a few meetings I'd like to update you on and speak about. On February 4th, our department's accountability and support team, which is, as you know, solely dedicated to Hartford and helping Hartford Public Schools and their recommendations. We met on February 4th, actually, with Superintendent Andre Chemical and members of his executive cabinet to discuss the district efforts to fulfilling the 64 recommendations. It was a very good meeting. We filled the room with a lot of professionals that are interested in helping Hartford move along, and we have a really good working relationship. I believe the purpose of the meeting, as I said, is to the coordination between HBS and HST and to align the support that we can give them. 4 takeaways from this. And more important, the superintendent will add the 64 recommendations as a standing meeting agenda item in the executive meetings, which are also Wednesday mornings, which are 9:30. The AST and HPS teams will share evidence of HPS progress towards the 64 recommendations regularly at the conclusion of each meeting, actually, to make sure that we're in alignment and that the communication is really flowing and in all sense. The CSD will also continue to provide specific technical assistance to HPS in program requirements and planning for federal and state grants. And finally, the AST will assist HPS with resources to develop a shared understanding of multi-tiered system for support. This group will be getting together again in April. 8 months. Additionally, on February 2nd, the commissioner and members of the CSD leadership team met with the superintendent and 3 members of the board of education, which included the chair. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the CSD's 3-pronged reviews and recommendations. It was a very productive meeting. There were a lot of questions back and forth. And the questions that HPE brought up to us were questions regarding the application process for magnet schools, special ed grant opportunity, and some of the recommendations that were included on 64. The meeting included the commissioner reiterating her commitment to transparency and accountability, as well as our continued support for HPS in meeting. And that
wow, I'm impressed. All right. Good morning, Board, Commissioner. Thank you very much. This is the update of Bridgeport Public Schools, and I'm going to provide you a high-level update of key features that are listed in your supplemental packet. There was a lot that occurred over the last couple of months. On January 29th, the interim superintendent presented the proposed budget for the fiscal 26-27 school year. The technical assistance team in Public Works, as well as members of the State Department of Ed, provided a significant amount of support to the district and the superintendent in order to create a robust and transparent budget proposal. As many of you well know, a lot of that conversation goes into this, a lot of data mining, a lot of strategic planning, a lot of discussion points where to find opportunities to advance student outcomes relative to the fiscal portion of that. So we spent a lot of time supporting in that presentation. The outcome of that was the superintendent's proposed budget, which is a 14.7% increase over this fiscal year, which is a total of $44.1 million. Subsequent to that, the commissioner and the department met with the superintendent to outline some cost efficiency items that needed to be addressed as well. As the budget process continues, it doesn't end with the superintendent's presentation. We want to see that every last dollar is maximized within the district, and I believe that I shared that the last board update. There's a long list of items that the superintendent has been tasked with to go back to, which our technical assistance team has been reporting and raising as concerns or opportunities to find those efficiencies. I'll give one example. One of the factors that every year a district should look at are the number of special ed students who are receiving services in grade 12 who may graduate. You no longer have to fund that if they are no longer receiving services upon graduation and receiving their diploma. So that goes into cost-saving opportunities if the number of students at that grade level with disabilities who are receiving services is high, right? So just one example of some of those cost efficiencies we're trying to support the district with. Subsequent to that was the February 9th Bridgeport Board of Education, where the board adopted a budget that was approximately 36% above this fiscal year, or $106 million. And the driver behind that, what we understand, is they wanted to restore a lot of the positions that were reduced since 2013. Other areas of high level work, certainly the district has made some progress in the area of nutrition. If you all recall, last year, they were concerned with food service, basically restoring and adequately utilizing all the funding. The district team has met their training requirement, has returned the appropriate funding that they needed to, and it's really back on track in many regards with their statutorily required requirements, I should say. The district is also doing a lot of work with their chronic absenteeism to address chronic absenteeism in the district. They have a lot of success with their district attendance team. They've made a lot of good campaigns. There's a 21-day challenge amongst December that really tried to advocate for kids to attend school. They are still challenged with their numbers in the 30th percentile for December, which actually exceeds the previous year. But there's a lot of good work laying the groundwork for improved outcomes relative to chronic absenteeism that our team has been supporting them with at the district level. And I'll kind of close in saying that there has been a focus on some of the special education providers within the district. We're trying our technical assistance team is supporting the district, visit, make regular points of contact with external providers of special education. You can see that the technical assistance team did so recently at our direction to ensure that the district is monitoring the educational programming for those students and is maximizing also within the contracted language, the services that are being provided by those entities. So that's the next layer of work relative to the programming for special education. And then final, the operational effectiveness of the Bridgeport Public Schools. As many of you may be aware, the Bridgeport Board of Education has created a search committee for the new superintendent. It is still the expectation that the board is publicly representing their readiness to attract high quality candidates towards the role. And they can do so by ensuring that they have the appropriate structures in place, such as adopting updated bylaws, which dictate their functioning, some evaluation and structural roles and responsibilities that outline the different Board of Ed and superintendent, so that superintendent applicants know what to expect when they're coming into the district, and we can ensure that the board is supported with effective practices and operations for the time moving forward. And I'll take any questions. When will they know what? Like, there's a few different steps in the process. The first, it will go to the mayor, and the mayor's number will be able to identify what is recommended moving forward. Subsequent to that, it will go to the city council, who will make a final budget number. I will have to look back at the exact date there. I do have it in my notes. I don't have it at the ready, but it will be sometime in the spring, as we typically follow in a district.
As a follow-up to that, though, is there support? In support of budget. But that's the goal. That end up in the last sort of town council. Is there support?
So I can't speak to the response of the city, but what I will share is that in the vote by the Board of Education, there were 6 members of the Bridgeport Board of Ed who voted affirmative for that proposed advancement of a 36% increase. 2 voted against it, and 1 abstained from the vote.
Reference to the adoption of the updated bylaws, is there calendar or schedule that the board is offering, make sure that they satisfy that need and that requirement?
Yes, the board chair has communicated with us just as a few days ago that it is on a February agenda to be able to, or she plans to put it on a February agenda. Which date I'm not quite sure what it will land on. But they do plan to bring that forward as soon as possible. There has been regular conversation, and we met with them as is written here. We met with them to discuss some of those required components for the search process that we expect to be in place. And there seemed to be a consensus amongst the board that that is something that they really do need to do in advance.
I will say that by this time next month, that this will have to be progress.
I think it's reasonable to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And as always, we'll keep you posted on what is occurring there. I'm asking Brian Twinklewitz to come to the table to provide an update on the special education system review. We are first coming back to you after the report last month from West Ed with recommendations. And so Brian will provide that update as we will.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, board members. Good to see you all. During the last board meeting, West Ed presented a finalized special education review, which emphasized the Commissioner and CSDE's ongoing commitment to special education and improvement. As you recall, the system involved a vast collection of data, which reviewed and summarized information collected from a variety of sources, which include data, individual and small group interviews, as well as focus groups and statewide survey. The report recommended conclusions grounded directly in the data, which was reflecting the concerns and priorities voiced by educators, families, administrators, and other interest holders throughout the process, which led to these 4 areas, strategic areas, leading with vision, improving infrastructure, activities, activating strategies for instructional impact, ensuring effective accountability and continuous improvement. The report also acknowledged the interconnected nature of special education systems and underscored the need for coordinated and system-wide approaches for outcomes for our students. The recommendations provide a roadmap for us for continuous improvement and emphasize the need to prioritize and implement those recommendations in a thoughtful and phased-in approach. The next slide will show in your packets activities to date since the release of the report that we wanted to highlight for you. As you can see, they're organized into those 4 strategic areas related to vision, where we have been and continue to be proactively involved to kick off the legislative process this year in sharing data and information, specifically within the working group that is charged with reflecting on and providing recommendations for a variety of areas related to special education, and our continued internal coordination and alignment with the board strategic plans. Related to improving infrastructure, we've engaged in preliminary activities related to talent mapping, particularly within our department, as well as process mapping for our activities, which we've engaged in the last several years in documenting our systems of general supervision. And finally, we've had preliminary meetings with Public Consulting Group, which is the vendor who supports our CT system on a usability study. Related to instructional impact, we continue our bi-weekly meetings with the Talent Office to discuss retention and recruitment efforts across the state, and specifically reached out to, since our last meeting, to our advisory groups related to new dollars and investments to expand the recruitment efforts, which will start on July 1. And we've been sharing the different options for both uncertified paraeducators to continue their professional track if they're interested in becoming special education teachers, as well as teachers who are in programs to support those activities. And finally, I wanted to highlight related to accountability and improvement. On February 2nd, we submitted to our federal Department of Special Education, called OSA, our reporting related to special education indicators, which include graduation, dropout rates, achievement, as well as compliance indicators. And those data also help us in designing and supporting our district in professional learning and technical assistance activities. We coordinated just this past Monday with our partners at CERT to look at our data walls and understand who's better off for the activities that we're engaged in. Very valuable projects so that we can see comprehensively the activities that CERT as a partner provides for us. I do want to highlight also and thank you for the commitment to expand our capacity. We have posted a special education fraternity position, which is the posting is ending this week. That was very swiftly done, and we're excited about applied to go through the process with us. That position will support our complaints process specifically and increase the Bureau's capacity around special education law expertise. We also kicked off our first monthly meeting with board and parent attorneys, so school boards and parent attorneys. We're doing those every Friday. During those sessions, we highlight all training activities and data related to due process and mediation. Our first meeting was very well received, and we received compliments from both board and parent attorneys. And as you might imagine, much of the information we shared they were unaware of, including the payment structure for our hearing officers, and we feel that that had a very positive impact. And finally, we had collaborated with one of our higher education at UConn, increased our capacity with interns working with our department to look at trends that are coming into our office. As you know, our complaint process volume has increased significantly over the past 2 years, and our interns are helping us analyze those qualitative data that also help inform technical assistance. I'm happy to answer any questions or didn't know if you'd like additional.
Thank you, Brian. I really want to bring some capital one thing that we are not hiding anything here. We've done the reports publicly announced to everyone, and we're also holding ourselves accountable for review on a monthly basis. The work that we're doing to investigate the recommendations provided to us. So we continue to do this. This is kind of letting you know one of the big things here, getting that special ed attorney that will be in the legal office. We're looking for that to be a game changer in the way that we do. And a commitment to you to understand, we get recommendations, we take action, and we've done that swiftly. Thank you, Laura, who helped to spearhead that work out of the door. And so we will make sure that we get that information. Don't know if there are specific questions. So thank you very much, Brian. Final for my report is just giving you an update on the governor's bill proposals that are now out, and wanted to share that with you.
Good morning, board members. I did first just want to bring to your attention a few emails that you've gotten from me. I did send 2 this morning. One of them has our agency bill, which has now been filed as of today. We are Senate Bill 138. So this is going to have all of the priorities that were voted out of the board at your January meeting. It is in the Education Committee. I'm not quite sure when the public hearing is going to be, but I will keep you updated. And as always, we will share the commissioner's testimony after it's been drafted and submitted. The second email I sent this morning was the governor's 3 bills, along with the fact sheets that help explain what the proposals are. These bills are also going through the Education Committee. The first bill is House Bill 5033, and this is implementing the governor's budget recommendations for education. It has 12 sections. Sections 1 through 3 set a schedule by which magnets and vocational agricultural operators can increase the rate at which they charge tuition to ensure appropriate revenue to support the students who attend those schools. Sections 4 and 5 extend the cap on the adult education and health and welfare for private pupils grants through fiscal year 2027. Section 6 repeals a contracting requirement in statute in order to allow the department to make funds available for maintenance of our educator certification system. Sections 7 through 9 clarify that certain state special education grants and programming are to be implemented within available appropriations by the department. Section 10 establishes an FTE operated teacher apprenticeship program, which is funded at $2 million in fiscal year 27. And this will support 75 teacher apprenticeships across the state. This is a priority of the governors and of the departments, and we're very excited that it was included. Section 11 effectuates the transfer of the Office of Student Loan Ombudsman from the Department of Banking to the Office of Higher Education. And Section 12 repeals $12 million in additional funding beyond the formula grant level or risk magnets. These districts will receive additional tuition funds through the statutory changes I've already spoken about that were proposed in sections 1 through 3. The next, so I'm actually going to take these out of order and do the last one next. So House Bill 5035. This is an act requiring districts to ban cell phones in the classroom. As you are all well aware, in August of 2024, this board passed guidance recommending that school boards put together policies to restrict cell phone use during the day and to ensure that student engagement in learning, support emotional well-being, and strengthen interpersonal skills. This is the governor's proposal for a bell-to-bell ban in schools. It will allow for the use of cell phones if it is being used for instructional purposes, or if you have an IEP or a 504 plan that allows for the use of those cell phones. The department did work very hard to obtain a scan of all 202 school districts across the state. This scan included current Board of Education policies, student handbooks, and direct district outreach. The summary of that, which I believe you all do have, is that 99% of districts, that's 199 in total, have a district-wide cell phone policy currently. 67% of districts, that is 136, already have a bell-to-bell ban in at least one grade band, either elementary, middle, or high school. And then included is also data on bell-to-bell bans by grade level. In elementary, it's 70% with 128 out of 182 with elementary schools. Middle is 71% with 122 out of 173. And high schools is 31% with 48 out of 154. You also should have information on 25 states that have K-12 statewide ban-to-ban bells or are currently debating them in their ongoing sessions. And Commissioner, I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add about this proposal.
Really just say we wanted to make sure that this board worked and provided policy that mentions this amongst those with bell bans. And so we now have that information that will be shared, and so that this will be debated widely in the legislature. But it's important to have information, right? And so we wanted to make sure that the statistics and the data are there, not only for what's going on in our state, but what's happening in states around us. As Laura mentioned, 25 states that's already this work. So just wanted to bring that to your attention in the states around.
Excellent. So the last proposal, I'd like a Jeep, if you could come up to Delaney. This is HB 5034, an act reducing testing burdens and enhancing the math curriculum. I think the chief is going to tee it up with an explanation of the very robust work that he did on assessments across the state being administered, not only the statewide assessment, but also local assessments. And then we can go into the proposal.
I didn't. I didn't do it by myself.
Yeah, well.
Team of folks. So HB 5034 really brings together many different things, and I just want to sort of give a brief overview of those things. So the key premise underlying all of this, and educators know this, is like one assessment cannot serve all purposes. Medical folks know this too. If you want, there are screeners that are given that are quick to get a general risk model, and then there are more in-depth assessments that you need to do to get more fine-grained, granular information, actionable information. So our approach at this SDE for many, many years has been that the state's assessment that we give at the end of the year is more an accountability assessment that's really designed to tell us how kids are doing, how kids are growing on the broad standards for that we expect kids to know. But anything that happens between the state assessment really should be in service of teachers and teaching and learning. That's been our approach and our philosophy. The stuff that happens in the middle should not be test prep for the state assessment. Should not be trying to predict how kids are going to do on the state assessment. They will do as they do. In the interim, we really need to focus on assessments that are different, that don't necessarily look like the state assessment or even function like it, because that cannot inform what everyday teacher need on a day-to-day basis. We need additional different assessments. So that's kind of the point. And so we've put out guidance called the Sensible Assessment Practices. We've done training. We've had numerous conversations with districts. My colleague Renee Savoy is sitting in here too, and she's been out to districts with me around these conversations. And so the legislature actually charged us to conduct this audit of assessments that are administered to students in districts. We know the state assessment, we know how many students take AP and things like that, but we didn't know until this audit what are actually all the assessments that students are actually experiencing in school. And so the report was sent to you yesterday as well, and we finished it and went over to the legislature. And the state assessment in a particular grade, even if you take the 5th grade where science is given, probably takes about 5 hours for a kid to actually take those assessments. I mean, there's setup time and all that, but we were sort of measuring like how much time students are spending. What we've seen is that there are many, many additional assessments that districts administer. Some are fine that actually serve instruction, and then others are all over the place. The most common use reported by district for their assessment was to track, report students of group 1. Not support instruction, but to track, report students of group 1. We already do that with the state assessment once a year. That's enough. What we need to do in the middle is assessments that actually help instruction. And a lot of those assessments that districts use are what we would term broad assessments. And broad assessments are things that assess what students should have learned, let's say, in a semester or a year. Not what they should have learned in the last 2 weeks. So, so the bill that we have, so the report kind of presents all the data and the findings and all that stuff. So the bill actually calls for a few things. The bill says we will establish an incentive program to encourage thoughtful reduction of these broad assessments that might be happening. And we're having many conversations with districts, and we will continue to have that, but now there is legislation to sort of allow us to set up this type of incentive program, which is great. Statute also charges us to issue new guidance, updated guidance, which we will, given what we learned through this work. And another thing we learned is that people were conflating the purpose, the type of the assessment and the purpose for which they were using it. So when you administer a broad assessment like the state assessment or similar type of test, it's hard to actually get actionable teacher information. But districts would tell us that they're using these broad assessments to support teaching and learning. And we're like, how is that possible? Or how is that realistically done? So partly what we felt was that there is need for what we would call assessment literacy, which is really what are the purposes of the assessments and how they should be information that should be derived from it. What are valid inferences you can make from the assessment? I think there's lots of parallels to the medical world here too. Sorry, I'm looking at it's just trying to make that connection. So what we have done is, and if we can go to the next slide, Kim, what we've done is we've actually engaged in a partnership with the National Center for Assessment. They're like considered the preeminent experts in our educational assessment world. They're out of New Hampshire, and they work with many states on this. And our RESCs. So what we're doing is in phase 1, we have sort of 3 phases. It's starting this year, actually next month. We're starting with sort of webinars for all districts. Again, none of this is going to be required. We're encouraging, and we think there's lots of interest in districts to engage in. So we're going to take the findings from the audit, and we're going to actually give it back to the district. Hey, here's what you said in your audit submissions, and here's what that actually translates to in terms of amount of time students are spending taking these assessments. And so that's going to be led by the folks from the National Center for Assessment. They're actually going to help folks think about what does it mean to use assessments in summative ways. And summative is when you're assessing if students have learned. It's an assessment of the learning. But our focus through all of this is going to be assessment for learning. So assessment in service of learning, not whether kids have learned, but how can I gather some information that actually helps me intervene and change what I teach, change how I teach so students actually learn. So it's really focused on assessment for learning. So it's called Student-Centered Assessment for Learning, or SCALE. That's kind of the acronym that we come up with. So this year, we're going to do a couple of webinars. We're going to have some follow-up discussions with districts, feedback, the assessment audit information. Next year is going to be a year-long PD effort. We're going to recruit districts who want to seek to be part of a cohort-based approach. There's going to be in-person 2-day institutes. There's going to be monthly webinars and actual on-site coaching. And that's going to be a key too. The experts are going to go out to the districts and really in those critical decision-making times, be involved with those, provide that support. Phase 3 is really just the next step. It's really the handoff. It's going to be, instead of the center folks leading it from the Center for Assessment, our RESC friends are going to lead it. They're going to offer that PD because they're doing some of this already with districts, because districts call them and deal with them on these things. How do you connect the curriculum? I mean, this is not devoid of curriculum. So I know we have monocurricular and all the work that Irene's shop does. So we are integrating this. This is not happening in isolation. This is very much connected to the work that's happening in academics. This is going to be connected to the guidance that we're going to be coming out around our MTSS approach. So this touches all of these areas. So it's not going to happen in isolation, but it's going to be focused on the assessment. There are many other pieces to MTSS and academics. So we're going to come at it from the assessment side of it, but it's going to be tied into the guidance that our colleagues. So in a nutshell, Commissioner, that's kind of the effort that we have ongoing. So I'll pause and take.
I just wanted to make reference to other committee.
Oh, yes, sorry. So there's one other piece that's in the legislation, the 5034 bill, assessment reduction at the local level. For one thing, the districts need us to explicitly say that, because we've heard that from districts and from RESC to say, we need to almost give permission, I'll put that in quotes, to districts to say, all these things that you're doing, you don't really need to do them. We want you to focus on teaching and learning and instruction and engaging classroom. That's what should be happening. The state assessment will do what it does, and it does it well, and it'll continue to do that, and it'll be our North Star, but you need to focus on this. But so partly the pressure that comes from accountability is another factor in this. So the legislature, in parallel to charging us with doing the assessment audit, also charged CEA and AFT, our teacher unions, to review accountability practices and high school grading practices. So there was a committee of stakeholders that was engaged in that work, and I was on that committee as well. And their report just got sent to the legislature as well. It makes me think we should probably forward that to the board as well. So as part of that committee's recommendation, one of their recommendations was to reduce the weight of the high school assessment in the high school accountability model, because the current federal law really forced our hand, and the high school assessment, which is the SAT for the vast majority of the students, or the alternate assessment, that high school achievement indicator accounts for more than 50% of the weight in the high school accountability model. So we've seen an explosion of chasing that test score at the high school level, when what should be happening is all the things we talk about, right? Dual credit and industry recognized credentials and pathways and all these things we're going to hear about. That's what we should be incentivizing, but because of the accountability model, there tends to be a pressure to chase those test scores. So the test score, it's important. It's an important measure, but it shouldn't have that outsized kind of weight in the model. So their recommendation from that committee is actually baked into the bill now. So the governor's bill actually acknowledges that work group, and the committee and says, when the time is right, we seek flexibility, because we are gonna need flexibility from the Fed, because that's a law, and it actually forced our hand to increase the weight. Prior to ESSA, it was a little less, that's actually forced the thing. So that's the other piece that's in the bill, but it kind of relates to the testing reduction, because it'll, I think, release the sort of pressure valve for some folks.
Thank you. I really just want you to see the work, some of the work that's going on behind the scenes for this, and certainly appreciate the governor's budget proposal that really solidifies the direction that we want to be in, but it is informed by the work that we've done on inside of the point. Thank you for that. And that was nothing important. But the report of the commissioner, other.
Final question. Item 8. Need a motion, please, to approve the network extension year 5 for Hamden Middle School. Okay, Melissa, Jennifer.
We're ready. I guess we're going up.
Morning. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the State Board of Education. The Commissioners Network is one of the state's most intensive school improvement strategies. Established to support schools facing persistent academic and operational challenges, the network. We create targeted services, targeted resources, increased flexibility, and co-partnerships with us. We implement evidence-based, transformative improvement strategies aimed at improving outcomes for students. And the Commissioners Network, following a rigorous selection and planning process, all these years turnaround plan grounded in talent, academics, finance, and culture, improved operations within the state. While schools typically participate with 3 years, statute does allow the board to approve up to 2 additional years. When more time is needed to solidify process and to ensure sustainability. Today, we are bringing forward Hamden Middle School for 5th and final year in the Commissioners Network. This request reflects both progress of the school and the importance of providing more focused time to fully embed effective practices so that improvements are sustained down the network. At this time, Jennifer Webb, the Bureau Chief of the Turnaround Office, will introduce Hamden team, provide a progress update, and provide a rationale for the extension plan. You will hear, I think.
Morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce the leadership team of Hamden Middle School, including Assistant Superintendent Aaron Bailey and Principal Scott Tronner. Since entering the Commissioners Network in 2022, Hamden Middle School has made meaningful progress in strengthening instructional practices, student engagement, and school culture. For a bit of context, Hamden Middle School serves approximately 845 students in grades 7 and 8. Nearly half of the student population is eligible for free or reduced price meals. 16% receive special education services, and 10% are identified as English learners or multilingual. When the school entered the Commissioners Network, their initial audit identified some significant challenges. Instructional practices were inconsistent, student engagement was largely compliance-based,
Professional learning lacked some coherence, and behavioral supports were unevenly implemented. This required some foundational work to stabilize their systems and establish consistent expectations for teaching, learning, and behavior. Over the past 4 years, the school has made steady progress addressing these core issues. The school's overall Next Generation Accountability Index increased by nearly 6 percentage points over 2 years, with modest but consistent gains in both English language arts and mathematics, including for high-need students. Academic growth indicators also show positive movement, particularly in mathematics. Instructionally, the school has established some greater coherence and consistency. Our walkthrough data reflects regular use of clear learning targets and criteria, and professional learning has shifted to structured, job-embedded supports aligned to their instructional priorities. Professional learning communities, facilitated by content area specialists, focus on standards alignment, differentiation, assessment design, and data analysis, and it's complemented by the bite-sized PD that's embedded within the instructional day. In the area of culture and climate, chronic absenteeism has declined. Behavioral supports have strengthened through more consistent implementation of PBIS and restorative practices, and they have Dragon Pride days, which support student engagement and improve attendance on half days. Family engagement has also increased through stronger transition supports and more intentional communication. Commissioners Network resources have been strategically leveraged for both academic and non-academic priorities, and it includes staffing key positions, teacher leadership stipends, and extended learning opportunities for students. Importantly, the district has shared in these costs, and they work collaboratively with us to align resources to identify needs. As Hampton Middle School prepares to enter a 5th and final year in the Commissioners Network, their focus is now shifting from implementation to consolidation and sustainability, ensuring that the effective practices are fully embedded within their district structures and are sustained beyond their participation in the network. I'll turn it over at this time to Assistant Superintendent Bailey and Principal Connor.
Education. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Erin Bailey, Assistant Superintendent for Hampton Public Schools, and I'm here to respectfully request a 5th year of Commissioners Network funding for middle school. Over the past 4 years, the Commissioners Network has been a catalyst for real and measurable improvement in our district's schooling and middle school. Hampton Middle School serves nearly 900 students, representing a full diversity, energy, and needs of our community. This funding has allowed us to build systems that simply did not exist before. Systems for high quality instruction, data-driven decisions, a learning environment where students feel connected, supported, and free. The results are evident. Our teachers are receiving consistent coaching around high quality instruction. Students are experiencing stronger Tier 1 instruction every day. We're seeing early academic gains, but just as important, we are seeing cultural shift. Safer hallways, common classrooms, and stronger relations. However, the work is not finished. The structures we have put in place are working, but they are still fragile. The additional year of support will allow us to fully institutionalize the core practices we have. Deepening coaching systems so that rigorous instruction is the norm. Strengthening intervention models to accelerate learning, not merely remediate it. Embed our MTSS, restorative practices, data cycles so they function reliably without external scaffolding. Ensuring that every student, especially our multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and those historically underserved have equitable access to challenging grade level coursework and the social emotional support they deserve. Over the past 4 years, this partnership has transformed Hampton Middle School, strengthening instruction, stabilizing culture, improving attendance, and building meaningful systems. But this year, something has emerged, a school-wide focus on high school readiness, ownership, and long-term success that is giving our work new coherence and purpose. Staff have embraced this shift wholeheartedly. This fall, the new voluntary committees, the high school readiness team, and the new student monitoring team through ISAP certification. Their work complements and amplifies our Commissioner Network goals. The high school readiness team has already made significant progress. They've communicated the on track for success in high school criteria clearly to students. They've begun aligning language, expectations, and appropriate policies with Hampton High School to create a more coherent secondary school. With the articulation between the two schools, through joint walkthroughs, peer department visits, and regular attendance of high school leaders at Hampton Middle School meetings. They've initiated the groundwork for a joint Hampton High School, Hampton Middle School student mentoring program. They've identified executive functioning as a critical skill gap and responded by embedding executive functioning support in classrooms, offering professional learning for staff, and providing targeted small group instruction for Commissioners Network funded executive functioning coach. Hosted a family engagement, family executive functioning night, extend support beyond the classroom. Perhaps the highest leverage effort are the student-led conferences centered on high school readiness, executive functioning, student agency, and self-reflection. These conferences meaningfully engaged families and help students articulate who they are as learners and what they need to thrive in high school. A new student monitoring and support team grew out of data Principal Schroner analyzed last year while serving as assistant principal at Hampton High School. Nearly 90% of the ninth graders most at risk of repeating a year had entered Hampton Public Schools within the previous 2 to 3 years, and they had struggled in comparison to their peers in middle school. That finding was just too important to ignore. In response, Principal Schroner created a systemized approach, one that includes early academic and social emotional training, with review of IEPs, intentional family outreach, and preparing students with strategies strongly supported in Don Hattie's research. This work does not compete with the Commissioner's Network Plan, it elevates it. It provides a unifying purpose for instructional improvements in rigor, cognitive engagement, discourse, and Tier 1 instruction. In many ways, high school readiness has become the lens through which the staff now views the work. This is particularly critical because Hampton Middle School is our only middle school. Any progress or setbacks affect the entire 7th through 12th grade pipeline. A sustained investment now will pay dividends for years to come in our high school performance, our graduation rates, and our students' long-term readiness for college, career, and civic life. As we prepare for life after the Commissioner's Network, one message from staff, both in informal conversations and formal, that has been unmistakable. The roles funded through the network have been indecisive. This year, we were able to sustain the deans, climate advisors, and instructional specialists, and add an executive function, all of which have fundamentally changed what is possible in our school. Their work has supported teacher growth, stabilized student behavior, and allowed classroom instruction to become consistently stronger. A 5th year of Commissioner's Network funding would allow us to solidify these gains, sustain momentum, and support our students, every single one of them, enter high school prepared, confident, and on track for success. We value this partnership deeply because we have seen the impact on instruction, on climate, and most importantly on our students. We are not asking for a 5th year to start new initiative. We're asking for time to solidify what we have built, time to ensure sustainable change and prevent regression. Commissioner's Network has given us momentum. A 5th year will allow us to transform that momentum into lasting success. On behalf of our superintendent, Scott, myself, students, families, staff, and the entire Hampton community, we thank you for community support and for considering our request.
I have the experience of having and for 30 years ago. It's near and dear to me. A couple of questions is that I'm all in favor of the 5th year. I mean, the gains, they were bigger, hoping that you can talk about it. And those questions then. But one of the questions I have are, because this is now 4 years, and student body that is already the long student body have no. How are we going to address that? How are we going to take it? More important, my question is, how stable has the staff been? If we're putting all this effort into training them and making changes, will the staff that are making the change speak staff? I have no question, but you can start with that.
Sorry, yeah. So the first year year and a half of commitment that was, we had a designated. But since then, we have hired quality staff. We have maintained those very, very small turnover rate.
Those sort of become that's the mileage as far as professional lesson that they're receiving, the climate and culture. You know, I've been in the district for a long time, and as I run into people from other schools, they often ask, hey, anything available up into the school. We want to come here and so and be part of that.
That's unusual. The other questions are just a 28% reduction in chronic absenteeism. But it's a statewide effort and the other question is the fitness standards went up 20%, and I'm like, wow, how'd that happen?
I mean, I think that there's we have a great PE staff for sure. They go well beyond outside the classroom in terms of programs that they offer. We have a for school program that is free for students to come at 7 o'clock in the morning, exercise with staff. And the intramural program after school has been augmented in the past year or so. And then we also have our scholastic sports as well that have become very popular in terms of tryout list. Students just want to pledge and be part of that.
Thank you very much.
I'll also say that classrooms where we find our students be absolutely most engaged are around. So the 4 teachers that spearhead our PE department in the middle school are spectacular. They really understand our kids.
I think physical fitness. Eat and exercise in the morning, have a great breakfast, and a great start to the day.
Not bad.
Sort of frame that around executive functioning, but one of our big pushes in the school is here. Start your day off a certain way with routines that carry out throughout the day.
Those in favor of the approval of the management rule, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It is approved. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it very much.
Item B, adoption of educator preparation and certification boards. Proposed regulations recommended to be reinstated as a motion.
Elementary level, happy Valentine's Day. I look forward to getting back to my classroom quickly after this, so we can celebrate Valentine's together. All right, so we are before you today with our the legislation or doing the regulation. So our regulations go through a vetting process through the ad hoc where they work with a third party legal support with the family groups out of Washington, D.C. When it comes to our board for additional ratification, and then just through many processes to get to this point to be before you. We're looking forward to getting these done. We got a couple more batches for you in the near future, so that we can move on to progress when we be reimagining and reimagining. So with that in mind, do you have any questions on the packet of regulations that are for you at this time?
Questions from the board? And all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion still carried. Okay. Got a up over there. I got to work. Aaron. Okay, item 3, the adoption of CEPCB's 2026 legislative proposal regarding sunsetting regulations. Can I get a motion? Motion second.
So this is really just to ensure that those regulations that have been identified in Health Act 2441, that should they be in process in the regulatory process, which many of you that any of those that are in process will not subject delays. Yeah. Our education here. We're requesting an amendment to what is already in statute, which would just allow that those regulations that have passed you all and are in the system would stay in place until that process has been controlled.
Please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried.
Thank you so much. I just want to also let you know that the emergency temporary authorization recently came through the February agenda for our board. So we're having a special meeting to ensure that staff is approved by our board and office as well to ensure that the emergency temporary service.
Item 9. Financial matters. Good one.
No, I love it. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm gonna hit this on a high level. I just want to point out, the governor's proposal came out last week, so this is very early in the process of the budget cycle. We start with the governor's proposal, but then it goes through the whole legislative process. But I want to hit some of the high notes that we got here. There's a lot of items that we put in our budget request that was approved by the board that we actually got in the governor's proposal. So that's really great news. A couple things I wanted to point out, and actually Laura mentioned some of these in her presentation earlier. But we got establishing statewide literacy strategy and curriculum for $4.5 million. That was part of our budget option that was approved by the board. Continuing the teacher registered apprentice program for $2 million. Providing the Center for Connecticut Education Research Collaborative for $500,000. Continuing funding of successful school-based behavioral health initiative for $5 million. Just make sure, and Laura also mentioned the free rapid for Connecticut students for $12 million. These are all really great increases to our budget. With increases, there are always decreases to stay within the spending cap, but a lot of those were places that, at least in a kind of been in a positive way, were minimal impact to the way that we provide services. So a lot of them were the places where there were decreases or were likely the places that we were getting new money and it wasn't a decrease in funding, it was just the places that we weren't getting the new money. So it's not that we're taking cuts, it's just a decrease in the additional funding. So overall, we're looking at this as a really positive budget option. We are, just based on the timing, that obviously this wasn't presented in the subcommittee, but we're looking to talk about this in a lot more detail when we meet at our subcommittee meeting in a couple of weeks. We can go through each line item in a lot more detail at that point, but we're happy to take any questions that you might have at this point, if you have any.
Thank you for the that one. It's tied for the beginning. Your absolute value. The nation is operating investments at schools and online assess that. That's going to be allowed to charge for this. I don't. But like that raises for me, and it's better to talk about part of it's but it's not a particular part for I'm just curious if you anticipate your implications there with respect to the sending entities, something that's counterbalancing this some sort.
It's not necessarily counterbalanced, but it's not a decrease in the current appropriation. So this was new money that we were supposed to be getting in fiscal year 27. So there's not a decrease in the appropriation, it's just a holdback of what we were supposed to be getting in new money. So we're hopeful that it's not going to be, I know obviously people were looking towards this because it was in the budget. So they were looking towards this money, but it's not a decrease in current expenditures.
So compared to the fund, which is kind of the same.
Correct. Yeah.
Under the baseline adjustments that would reduce funding for aspiring educated. About that, I'm assuming raise based on actual usage means that don't have aspiring educators for this scholarship, which hurts me. But you've got this.
I will do the best I can, but I may need to phone a friend here. My understanding is that there are some limitations with who is eligible to apply for that scholarship based on the way the legislation is written. So although we do the best we can to recruit people for that program, there is limitations on who can be part of it. So that's why we haven't gotten as many people in as we would like for that program.
Correct. So this was a scholarship for and so now years in, not been utilized for full appropriation. That was there. One of your proposals.
That is my next question. Okay.
Yes. Is to extend this to all districts in the state and to all candidates that would be eligible. That is in our legislation.
So that's the proposal that came. That's like the policy line. Yeah, correct. Okay. So that understand now. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to add anything on Dr. Hughes because it is important. One of this expansion in the governor's budget that you have going forward. And that is really important as we're focused on literacy across the state and the work that we've been doing now for and this is adding to, we're seeing steady things. I recognize that it's not across all our learner groups, and that's where we need to really focus in. But this is adding to the work that we've been doing in the state, and I just wanted to hear something about that because I think it's important to recognize that this board advocated for and that we had it.
Commissioner, yes, instructional coaching has learn on the job over time, but if we really want to accelerate some of he's always the famed state across the country in their implementation of statewide coaches that have accelerated students. Also know it's also something we've heard from the field. Many of our educators across the state feel that whereas high quality instructional materials are critical for helping our kids those all of them. To make reference to our partnership.
Right, internally and externally though, because this was not done nicely.
This is work across, we have the dyslexia, the staff is going on there. We have our literacy center, and they're going to work together on this. So that coaching would not just be, it's not be isolated.
I don't want to speak too soon, but we have engaged with a partnership. Regional comprehensive center. Research frameworks for instructional coaching. How? And
the other question. I think item 11A, implementation of the State Board of Education Comprehensive.
Good morning again. It's good to be back. I can't say I'll be brief, but I'll try to keep it short. I'm very nervous.
And I'm going to
referring to, and I'll get to that explanation in just a minute.
I'm extremely grateful for the creation of our Health Careers Academy pathway. Thanks to New Haven Career Connected Pathways for allowing the future healthcare providers to get a head start on the careers that lay ahead of us. As a result of this program, I am now a certified nursing assistant, graduate of the EMT program at Yale Center for EMS, 2-time CPR certified, and graduating with over 20 college credits for a nursing major.
Alana, what a star. Now there is a student that is prepared for learning, life, and work beyond school. The title of our very own 23-28 CSBE strategic plan. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And one strategic priority in particular, while I don't read normally during presentations, I would like to just read this priority for you to take this off. Create opportunities for all students to explore multiple career pathways with coordinated and rigorous programs that are developed in partnerships with institutions of higher education and local regional employers, and that align with economic opportunity and advancing students in careers of their choice. And we're doing just that at the Department of Education now, maximizing opportunities for all 497,764 students in our schools. This strategic priority is near and dear to my heart, as one half of an office is dedicated to this curriculum work, as well as many others throughout the agency. This work actually began prior to the development of the state board plan, but has greatly increased in recent years, particularly with the convening of the CSBE Career Readiness Workforce Council, made up of CSBE employees representing nearly every office in this agency. They've been invited here today so that you can see firsthand that this strategic priority is absolutely an agency priority across all divisions. Can you please stand, folks? And you can't stand me, but you should. Thank you very much, everyone. And we love numbers, so we've had to do indicators for this. We do expect by 2028 that 60% of our students, 60% will be earning 3 or more dual credits. And we also expect to see an increase in the number of students earning an industry recognized credential or IRC. We're going to talk a little bit more about how we're going to reach these ambitious but attainable goals in a few moments. The foundation work on the part of the agency has been key to the successes that we've seen thus far and that we will continue to see. This work includes partnering with other state agencies such as the Department of Labor, Office of Workforce Strategy, Department of Public Health, the CTEC system, Department of Administrative Services, Office of Policy and Management, and Office of the Governor, who's been involved in this as well. Our higher ed partners, CSCU, CT State, and University of Connecticut, as well as private colleges and universities, also partnering with businesses across Connecticut and their representative associations and numerous nonprofit organizations, not to mention many, many districts across Connecticut, including superintendents, school counselors, and everyone else that will be between. Karen Amaker, who I'm proud to say works in my office as the Director of Workforce Development and Career Readiness, will now speak more about these critical partnerships, as well as a game-changing grant that was offered by the department, which helped launch district level and higher education work, which represents the very foundation I'm referring to. But first, let's hear from another student.
I'm grateful that I've been eligible to get college credit from every course that I've completed so far. And that has really made me feel more confident going into my plans for a 4-year bachelor's degree in college, and knowing that I'm able to really take these classes with confidence that I can complete them, but as well as helping me navigate what I wanted to do. I was able to take the ECE UConn French class last year, and this year with environmental science, and already have a UConn transcript, and that really demonstrates what I've been able to learn as a student and the continuous education that I'm going to get in college, that they're going to see that I already have those classes under my belt and that I am ready to take on more classes in college.
Good morning, Commissioner and Board. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of the work that is out of office vision. Before I speak to our foundational investments, I want to highlight and elevate the inclusive stakeholder engagement that really guides the work that we do. Stakeholder engagement, as you know, and participation are crucial components in achieving successful educational and workforce initiatives. By involving a diverse array of stakeholders, we can ease the barriers and create more effective policies and programs that support the education to workforce pipeline. Our partnerships with the Department of Labor, public and private colleges and universities, the Office of Workforce Strategies, the Department of Public Health, workforce boards, and employers make it possible to assist our districts in building robust pathways for students transitioning from education to successful careers. We are at the intersection of the ecosystem. Prioritizing engagement through our CSDE-led committees, such as the Post-Secondary Success Work Group, our Secondary Success Community of Practice, Perkins Leadership Team, the Ability to Benefit State Team, the Public Health Workforce Pipeline Initiative, and of course, the Credentialing Advisory Council, ensures that initiatives remain relevant, inclusive, and impactful, ultimately contributing to a more skilled and prepared workforce. You'll see that you'll have a CSDE committee document in your packet. In terms of foundational investments, to date, the CSDE has awarded over $8 million in funding to support and expand dual enrollment across 23 public and private colleges and universities, as well as 89 public school districts. $4.9 million in grant funds was awarded to our IEGs, our institutions of higher education, to strengthen their ability to offer dual credit and no cost enrollment for qualified high school students from low-income families. Additionally, $3.8 million was awarded to 89 school districts across Connecticut to expand dual credit offerings in high schools, enabling more high school students to earn college credit before graduation through partnerships with our IEGs. Our mid-year progress reports from those grant recipients show that how funds were used, among other things, to improve teacher training and technology, as well as to expand course offerings. And we're seeing that across the board. Again, you'll see that you have a handout referring to dual credit expansion grant recipients, and that's just a sample of the grant recipients that is included.
So when I joined CCA, it was really helpful because I was able to talk to administrators and all of the teachers that worked there, and they helped me to understand what the education pathway was like. And in doing so, I was able to really realize what I wanted to be and what I wanted to go into. For the dual enrollment program, it helped me because I was able to not only stay in high school and do all the fun activities, but also take college courses and gain credits that I wouldn't be gaining originally.
You're enrolled in CCA. What pathway are you enrolled in?
Engineering and manufacturing.
Engineering and manufacturing. And engineering and manufacturing, do you know what courses you're enrolled in that pathway?
SolidWorks and CAD.
SolidWorks and CAD. And are you working toward a college certificate this year?
Yes.
Which one?
SolidWorks and AutoCAD, an AutoCAD certificate.
An AutoCAD certificate. That's awesome. Are you enrolled in college classes?
Yes.
Which college? How many college classes?
5 in total.
5 in total this year. So that's how many college credits?
15.
15 as a high school freshman. Are you going to stay with this program for how many years?
4.
4 years. So you'll have maybe an associate degree by the time you graduate high school?
Yes.
And what do you plan to do with that when you graduate?
Get a good job.
Get a good job? Right out of high school maybe? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And any other thoughts about CCA?
I just think it's going to help me a lot in the long run and get it just easier out of high school to get a job and make money.
That's awesome. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you.
Great success stories. Violet, following an education pathway. Love that. Through a dual enrollment program, we also has the opportunity to meet, talk with education professionals, help them better define a specific path. And AJ, a high school freshman taking 15 college credits, is waiting for a well-paid job after graduation, while leaving open the door to a college degree should he choose to go down that path in the future. It's ideal. And by the way, at the end of this year, AJ will be able to do a lot more than I can do, and I've got a lot of degrees. So you have to be on the company. The grant program that Karen spoke of, that the grants are going to our IATs and to our districts, it is critical that grant program, as well as the hard work of the folks in our agency, is already seeing results. More than 30% of 11th and 12th grade students have already earned 3 or more college credits. And there's a 50% increase in dual credit sources taken from 2019 to 2025. It started at 30,653 and it's gone up to 46,344. An incredible increase, and this is just the beginning. Karen will talk about some groundbreaking work here at the agency and by one of our partners in Success that all districts will benefit from and increase student access to career pathways and dual credit courses. But first, a word from one of our students.
I've taken a few courses of dual enrollment during my time at RHS. My first class was American Studies my sophomore year. We were the first grade, class of 2026, was able to take it as sophomores in our school, which was definitely very beneficial to all of us. We've been able to take much more ECE classes after that. I've taken Seminar Multimodal English, AP Pre-Calculus, ECE Modern Euro, ECE Spanish 4, and ECE Allied Health 1. Those are all from sophomore and junior year. Allied Health 1 was probably the highlight of all of my dual enrollment courses. I want to go into healthcare post-secondary, and it really helped me figure out which field I want to go into and modalities even. I want to become a radiologist or radiologist technician, and so we were able to go on many job shadows and get a lot of real-world experience that not many schools offer. So it helped me kind of navigate through different fields and things like that. I originally wanted to do physical therapy, which is very different from radiology, and I'm glad I took the course because now it has helped me with college applications and things like that. Currently, I'm taking ECE Calculus, CCP Accounting with Eastern English 125 ECE, and those are all for this semester. Next semester, I'll be taking ECE Gov as well, and is also with ECE Floral Design, which is an ag class at my school. We're an ASTE program school, and I'm not even enrolled in the ag program, but I'm still able to take it, which is awesome. It varies year to year, but with that availability, we can take more fun or different classes that might not be on our same track. It's not on the STEM track that I'm on, but it's still a fun class to explore all of the different options we have to offer. So yeah.
This at former principal is really a problem. It's cross connected amazing work and taking advantage of the opportunity that exists. It brings me to my point around access and what you're hearing from our students is the level of access granted to students. And we're not saying that students have to be at a certain grade level further along in their high school career to access college courses. We're saying when students demonstrate readiness, they should be allowed the access and opportunity to be as successful as they can. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about access to workforce and IRCs. Under CSDE's leadership, the Credentialing Advisory Council led the way in developing Connecticut's definition of IRCs, industry recognized credentials, curating the first ever registry of 390 non-degree IRCs and developing the application and data collection processes for accountability reporting. It is important to note that while the IRCs included in the registry are not complete, still updating, there are many more to add. They are aligned with their clusters. By offering consistency and transparency in the education to career pipeline, we empower school districts, employers, and institutions of higher education to work together seamlessly. The IRC registry will assist school districts in guiding students toward meaningful, real-world career pathways, while ensuring employers have access to a skilled talent pool. At the same time, our IHEs can align their programs with workforce demands, boosting students' employability through IRC attainment. Ultimately, our work builds stronger connections between education and workforce needs. Talk a little bit about the access to higher education and the CT state model agreement. Recently, the Board of Regents approved a policy to establish standards for CSE dual and concurrent enrollment programs, and this is a huge win. This allows eligible students to take college credit courses also in high school, which can count towards both high school graduation and college degree. This initiative will enhance educational opportunities, accelerate degree completion, reduce educational costs, and support Connecticut's economic growth and helping students gain advanced career training. The model agreement will simplify the process for districts by providing a standard template for CT state courses, eliminating the need for separate documents for each campus. We will utilize this template for a model agreement as required under statute. Finally, over the past 4 years, CSD has implemented activities to expand dual enrollment opportunities for Connecticut high school students in the areas of communication and partnerships, accountability and program quality, and funding support. That work continues for a formal partnership with CSE.
You're hearing a lot of meeting around K-12 school students, their eligibility for a career pathway. But we also are attending to our adult learners. We realize that the ability to benefit program was not necessarily robust in our state, such that adult learners have access to financial aid to pursue dual courses pathway. And under the leadership of Dr. Heineck, City,
for the first time, we're advancing this opportunity with technical assistance from federal government. We're very excited to see that there might be open up access for adult learners. We estimate around 5,000 of the 18,000 could benefit from this type of policy work moving forward. So we appreciate that partnership really is leading the way for. And I think that as we transition, we want to think about the funding sources that drive this. Certainly adult learners have to have access to financial aid, but we as a state have dedicated funding, and the most recent appropriations moved forward by the governor and approved by the General Assembly, suggesting that in fiscal year 27, we'll have $6 million to sustain the dual credit opportunity at the higher ed for our high school students. We also have $12 million annually that come through Perkins that then is directed to the local educational entities, our districts. Those two are our main funding source for these work. And we want to make sure that our districts have the greatest access to the pathways that exist for students, which is where you see in the presentations now, we've expanded and adopted modernized career technical education pathways so that districts can actually fund these programs in the future. So I want to, before I move on to our final student representative, I just want to capture some of the themes that you've heard from my colleague presenters and the work that our team has done here at SDT. This is about connections, partnering, and easing the barrier to access. That also includes our districts. We have to be able to support our districts in moving forward. Many of them are doing amazing work. And I'm excited to allude to our future work, which is to further their knowledge, access with what we're referring to as our pathway playbook for districts. Much like what was mentioned before with our course kits that have come out of the academics office, we're looking to, in a field of advanced manufacturing first, support districts build out programs if that's what they so choose to do, with all the ideas, tools, and methods that capitalize on to expand these offerings. So we'll close with our last individual who has a number of incredible credentials under his belt. And it's interesting to say that he is one of two students that we know of in the world who have earned one of these credentials, but I'll let him share his own message here as we start.
My name is Giovanni Bowden. I go to Albert I. Prince Technical High School, and I'm studying aerospace component manufacturing technology. Learning a trade in high school has really enriched my experience by allowing me to be hands-on with what I do and take hold of my future. And it really has allowed me to study what I want to study while also getting the academic part of it. My plans after I graduate are to go to college for mechanical engineering, and after college I plan to go to either the aerospace, maritime, or automotive industries. So the industry recognized credentials that I've earned so far are my OSHA 10, my NIMS precision measurement, my certified SolidWorks associate, certified SolidWorks professional, then the sheet metal drawing tools, weldments and surfacing credentials, and then I just got my experts certification. Those will allow me to be competitive when it comes to actually joining the job force, and it will also allow me to further utilize my skills when it comes to college or academics. Being at AI Prince Tech has allowed me to take college courses as a part of my high school career. The class that I took was Western History to the 1500s, and what that has allowed me to do is understand what college has to offer and what it would entail, and it has allowed me to understand what I would need to get through it while also having the resources available to me to help me through it.
Most of the adults in the room left high school with a college diploma and a few accolades relative to the flow of the organization you're a part of. Students in Connecticut today, where we want to go, They're walking away with multiple industry recognized credentials, multiple college credits, and opening up doors for them to advance their careers early or pursue secondary opportunities that they never believed they could. Thank you very much.
Yes. So first of all, thank you very, very, very much for sharing this wonderful presentation with us. I think that it certainly expands on information we've heard last month. And I am just delighted to see what happens. Having the agri-science seat at this table and my love of anything allowing our students to really get career ready before they graduate is something that's really near and dear to my heart. So I thank you for all the work that you presented. And I would add just in my other side of my life, I do work up at the College of Agriculture, Health, and Natural Resources at UConn. We have the 1-2-year school at our state university around agriculture. And that 2-year school, I think, would really benefit from maybe having some conversation on the ATV. The programs that we run in our 2-year school, again, they get a 2-year degree, they get an associate's degree around plant science, around arboriculture, around animal science. And I just think that this is super exciting. And we'll be carrying this right back to our associate dean of academic programs going, we need to talk. So again, many thanks for sharing this wonderful.
We find often we are at the epicenter of this work. Those partnerships are critical. Find and discover as we continue every time we interact. So thank you very much.
And another good takeaway is we had a student that was not going into that particular field. It took an agri-science course because it was fun.
So congratulations. Thank all those who are present, colleagues that may not have been able to extend our appreciation. I think this is fantastic. I'm curious as to how best to connect with a disconnected population. Opportunity use. Those young adults that are disengaged, they're not in school, a lot of attention, a lot of great work happening. With respect to that, is there, how best can this be used to re-engage those opportunities?
That's a great question. And I'll start with, and if the team wants to add, feel free. One of the things that is very important to us when we pursue the different kind of credential ones, to make sure that we leave all opportunities on the credentials. There's a reason for that. Students' interests vary widely and they change over time. If it's a micro level learning, right, one credential that they pursue and either use that as a way to figure out that's what I want or that's what I don't want. Or if they just want to broaden their horizons, as you heard from one of the students, who certainly has a lot of accolades. I don't think she would be framed as a disconnected youth, but what we want to do is open up opportunities for as much exposure as possible so that kids know what's available. If they didn't know that they could pursue something, we talk about barbering a lot, barbering certification. If they didn't know that that was an opportunity, the school district is able to move forward with it, that might engage them in a different way. And frankly, that has actually been one of a high level of engagement at one of our partner correction facilities for students who are incarcerated. Barbering is one of the most popular industry recognized credentials that students are pursuing. So there's a wide variety under our industry recognized credentials that we access.
And we've had some of this conversation about justice system, about helping these students. I had a conversation with, I guess, Dr. Karen kind of provost Mississippi State. We're very concerned about how can we disconnect people back involved the districts. There was so much excitement when we got that $6 million appropriation last year. Big enough line budget. I remember at the retreat, we went down to Louisville, we can walk through how that came about. We really started with the law, the state board of education, moving this as its priority. that we wanted to pursue, but there was so much money that excitement and got that money. And my email was flooding. I think most of our for all, I mean, everybody wants to be, this is a 6 million, and that's why I didn't often say 6 million is fantastic. I love the things, but I think that as we plan for the future and hopefully more appropriation in our years, we want to be inclusive. We don't want to limit ourselves. As we plan, let's look at this. Let's look at the perspective youth and try to be inclusive and make this an opportunity for all. We're in those discussions. I'm probably that.
There is a monthly secondary success community practice meeting that we host for our division, and that includes our school counselors as well as our post-secondary readiness week in each district. So we have a list of about 1,600 folks that are invited monthly to participate in conversation around topics such as the one that you're mentioning, around disconnected youth, but also opportunity to get access for all. So that means sharing best practices. I mean, bringing in this month, I think next week, we have Willie Barber from General Dynamics and Electric Boat coming in to talk to our counselors virtually, of course. But those kinds of opportunities keep the conversation going. They also inspire. They also allow for conversations and discussion around career pathway development, expansion, who gets opportunities and why, and what else we need to be doing. So those are ongoing every single month of the year, including June, July, and August. We'll see you with them, but that is one way that we engage districts in that type of work that you're talking about specifically around community involvement.
I'm motivated to think about how leverage all of this opportunity in our school council. I remember years ago what a game changer it was to the first time to include new enrollment as opposed to only facilities. Going back to our previous presentation about chasing the test scores, as an opportunity to reduce that portion, that weighting in our accountability system. What suggestions or aspirational goals might you have for how we could adjust that system to leverage these types of opportunities?
A wonderful question. We do have our performance office here. As the heat is coming up,
As he leaps over the chairs to get here.
The accountability portion of but what I will say is to emphasize the interconnected work of the agency in this, as well as across all the other alphabet soup that we've listed. It's really important to understand that as we engage in conversations, we want to connect. We have talked about data collections for industry recognized credentials at a minimum, at least so we know where students are. And that's one of your state indicators. See that number increase. But I'll toss it over to Ajit to talk about potential around accountability system.
Yes, that's exactly what's being discussed, is reducing the test score weight and increasing the college career readiness indicators weight. And this is the dual credit, credit attainment, AP exam passing, IB exam passing, things like that are part of indicator 6 of our accountability system. But that has 50 points in the system out of like 1,500 or so. And the test score, the SAT accounts for like 800. So just think about like 800 to 50, right? So there is a place for it, but it's clearly not weighted. So we want to sort of flip it. I mean, not exactly, but like have some significantly greater weight for these kinds of things. This is what actually helps students prepare for the next step. So there are also discussions about some of the other indicators in that accountability worksheet. So on track to high school graduation is another one that we want to sort of potentially elevate. So those are the conversations, and we should send you the report from that other committee because that actually talks about all these kinds of things and also talks about high school grading practices and topics. So,
and may I also just give kudos to the office as well in your partnership with the Department of Labor and the earnings outcomes. We want to encourage districts. Yes, accountability exists, but there are so many other data sources by which to measure success of your students and your districts. So it's been shared in past board meetings around those earning outcomes of students, which is another piece of this story. So we encourage access of all sorts.
So acknowledged. It was great to hear students in particular in this presentation. I am really pleased to I wanted to ask a question. I think it was a debate. I am looking forward, but I'm sure will be all right outcomes for the students. That's an expansion of the preparation programs. It seems great. It's always good to follow up to make sure that takes a while. Students advance in their lives and careers. So you got to give them time. I think it's going to get back in, scale up. This point that's been made about accountability. I'll leave this. Things seem good. I would encourage us to ask ourselves, are these things related to the long run? That other things are related, or other things as we that's the direction I hope will go very much.
We certainly want to monitor the outcome data, but we also look at leading indicators as well, right? It's number of districts who are actually passing the program, the number of students. Those are also helping us to wrap.
Very much agree.
Just to add, there was a study that just came out, the Center for Community College Research at Columbia, that talked about differential impact of a value add, if you will. It was not a value added model, but the model wasn't that way. But it basically showed like the students who participate in AP versus those who participate in dual credit versus those who take CTE, and then combinations thereof, trying to show like if you do CTE only versus CTE plus dual credit, what is the impact 1 year out of high school graduation and 6 years out, sort of like our labor and earnings dashboard to show the added impact of taking dual credit offerings. So we're building on existing evidence, but I think you're absolutely right that we need to keep checking and tweaking our models based on.
I'm serious. But I think in someone like through and seamlessly, really seems seamless to me sitting here. I'm sure that there's more to it. It's really remarkable that it's an opportunity to leverage that, as we say, to learn specifically. That it's learning. Able to gain that.
Thank you. We really couldn't do it without our Department of Labor partners and Data Link CT.
Thank you. I know Dr. Guaduco is going to jump in, but I just.
So I'm trying to get.
Yeah. I just wanted to double click though on what Dr. Sinan said, because so many times we're in kind of our own silo of the work that's happening, but I can tell you that I get that feedback nationally about this particular piece of work that we are doing here. And we have work to do. But just to be able to have folks sharing data, getting that information, and constantly listening to the field to say what else do we need to do. is really important and game changer for them, how we support them, wrap that up, how we support students in executive.
First and foremost, congratulations. That's a big one. It's state funding education to be able to do the CSC on there. I mean, we were in the state outside the college student law expansion from the stage. CSCU, our mission is simple: is the mission of knowledge for the expansion of college. Start. What happens? Sustainability. We are in the college states on everything. See. Jeez, but being themselves and college that mindset. So after this bit, we do equal centric achievement divided down majority minority. But here you know, CSU backwards.
I was trying to make a comment about the work that we did in law and system trial. So true, and I want to make sure that we favor this conversation. What we need to do about having a educator order to supplement programs. Because we have a lot of work to do with our educator preparation programs. I know from my own experience, we would love to expand our nursing career, but we just can't find a certified teacher to run this work. And the same thing exists in our manufacturing pathways. It's very difficult to find certified high school teachers job. And I think our EPs have a role in shaping the types of certifications that their students are looking to get. These are the types of career pathways. You have to incentivize people to go into the career of teaching in those pathways so that we can actually sustain the coursework as opposed to them being one-offs in certain places that have special access to things. So I would just encourage in the growing conversations to not forget about the necessity of developing our teacher expertise and how that folds into each.
You've heard about 50% of everything. I would say there's a lot more opportunity, certainly with our partners in that training piece. But thank you for that.
Thank you.
But that was also one of the focuses of the grant that we handed out to the districts for allow districts to help teachers get the certification. There's a cost involved, and this grant was meant to offset the cost in many of the districts that the grant used it just for that purpose.
Another question.
So I'm challenged by we only heard 50%. I probably was less than 50%, so I appreciate that. But is there a way that we could put together maybe a webinar or something for those of us that want to hear all of No, I want to get and I don't want to ask Commissioner to add, one of these pieces at every meeting as a regular topic for us.
I agree. I would love a seminar and really dig into this. It's
Super what you guys are doing. And again, I like to think that I'm a little dialed in because of the whole agri-science and what we do with our 2-year program and our college. But I think that if we could have either seminar, webinar, I don't care what you call it, but I would just love to hear totality so that I can be connecting people to the amazing things that you're all doing.
I've got it, and yes.
Okay. March, you were. Thank you. Thank you. Item 11, the State Board of Education conversion.
And I'm here just to to remind folks about how we got here. In 2024, a bill was introduced in the education, standalone bill, that was enacted concerning the development of a plan for the conversion of the State Board of Ed to an advisory board within its target. That bill did make it out of committee nearly unanimously, and it ended up going to the Appropriations Committee as well. And with that, the language in that proposal actually started as saying the commissioner in consultation with the State Board of Education may develop a plan. So at the end of session, on the last day of session, I believe, it ended up in Public Act 24-81. And it was section 121. So it was deep in there. And the language had changed to say that the Commissioner of Education shall develop a plan, and not in consultation with the State Board. We were also given $50,000 by the General Assembly, so we could have an independent contractor come in and do the plan for us. And so that is what Ingrid and her team have done. I did present this to you back at your June meeting in 2024 to let you know when I was doing a legislative recap for any of those of you who were there then, or years ago. I did present then to let you know that this would be coming. So now we are here. And you have the plan. It was done independently by CERC. And we transmitted it to this board and transmitted it to the General Assembly, which was the legislative charge. And so now I can turn it over to Ingrid and Marjorie.
Thank you so much, Laura. Good afternoon, distinguished board members and Commissioner of Education. My name is Dr. Ingrid Kennedy, and I have with me my colleague, Marjorie Davis, who's the Associate Director for Program at CERC, who was integral in the development to see the project to the end. Laura, thank you so much for that introduction to set the context, the historical context of how we got here. And the charge the CERC was given to actually do the report that you have in front of you. As Laura mentioned, we received a charge back in 2024. It seems like the aligns when you presented to the board. It was in the summer of 2024. Now we mentioned when it was presented to all of you. And you might ask why CERC? So we can go to the next slide. CERC, we are a quasi-public, and our legislation indicates that we are the quasi-public for the State Board of Education to support all of your activities on equity and education on behalf of the benefits of all children in Connecticut. As you can see, our legislation is very structured, and specific and targeted. And it provides us with the specific things that we must do as a quasi public. One of the ones that I want to highlight for you today is actually we have to provide and develop publications, research, and evaluation. So what we have before you is one of those charges as a research and evaluation. The research that we conducted, it was specifically what is called a secondary research or a research review of documents. Secondary research does not involve focus groups or direct interaction with individuals. The secondary research, what it does is look at a blanket information of all public information available. So that's what we did, a secondary research. So we can go to the next slide. According to the Public Act, as stated, it actually said that directs the Commissioner of Education to develop a plan to convert the State Board of Education from serving as the department head as defined in Section 4.5 of the statute to an advisory board within the Department of Education. In the second part, empower the Commissioner of Education to serve as the department head for the Department of Education. So what we have to do, it was research all the 50 states to determine which one of those states had the State Board of Education as an advisory board, and which one of the states had the Commissioner of Education as the head. So we did a full research, again, secondary research for all the states. And we can go to the next slide, please. So we needed to do it this way. We needed to be equivalent because some states did not call the Commissioner of Education commissioner. They called them Secretary of Education, multiple names. So all those equivalent. We needed to examine the statutory structures of every single one of those models of governance, in which either the commissioner was the head of the Department of Education, and the board served as an advisory to the commissioner. We also analyze all the benefits, the challenges. We have learned a lot of every single state, everything that needed to be in place in order for that to take place. We also looked at Connecticut, the unique position of our state. We needed to provide the report to summarize the findings and provide with some recommendations based on the research that we conducted on those models. What other states learned, what other states have done, and in some cases, what states have gone through a level of transition similar to what this legislation was proposed. At the end, we wanted to make sure that we provided the Commissioner of Education, as we were charged by, with a very comprehensive analysis of what it is the blanketed aspect across all 50 states as it relates to. And then when we went through an analysis, and as mentioned, since 2024, we did this huge state by state, how many board members, how are they elected, how is the commissioner elected, and then we began to compare those states with Connecticut. So the report provides you with the states. They have very similar as Connecticut, and my colleague is going to speak to you a little bit more about the analysis. The summary of the report, I would say, we are providing 5 recommendations. But before we go to the specific summary, I just want to outline the questions that we needed to answer through our research. What states have a single head as the leading body? What states have the State Board of Education in an advisory capacity, as I mentioned earlier? What is the advisory board's role in those states? They do have them. What is the makeup of the advisory board and how are they appointed? And what are the benefits and challenges to that particular model of governance? So that was the questions that we needed to answer through our thorough analysis. My colleague will walk you through the analysis of those pieces. We will talk through, after the analysis, to some of the suggestions and recommendations. We also wanted to provide recommendations with also some of the things of navigating what could be the challenges if the state decide to move forward with this conversion as stated by the legislation. So, Marjorie?
Good afternoon, I was going to say good morning, but good afternoon, Commissioner and board members. I'm Marjorie Davis, I'm the Associate Director at CERC, and I'm pleased to talk a little bit about the analysis that went into producing this report. And so it was an extensive amount of time and drilling down on information. We looked at all 50 states and the governance structure of all 50 states in terms of the educational leadership power, and the majority of the states share that power between a state board of ed and a commissioner or an equivalent in some states, different names. And so we started there, and then from there we drilled down even further to identify those states that had a single leading body, so a commissioner or equivalent, and an advisory board or a state board of ed, because some states not have a single leading ed as a commissioner. So we narrowed it down from the 50. We narrowed it down to there were states that had a single leading head, but they had a state board of ed, but the state board of ed still had the governing power. They had policy making power. So then we drilled down even further from there and said, well, which states have a single leading head and a state board of education that was in an advisory capacity. And that's where we can kind of look a little further. If we can look at the next slide. So there were only four states that fit in that criteria or in that model. And within the report, you can see the details in here. So Maine, New Mexico, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. And Wisconsin is actually kind of unique. So these four states have a commissioner or a single head leading individual with a state board of education in an advisory capacity, which means that the state board of education does not have policy making power, does not have governance, but they serve in an advisory capacity. And in different, they're responsible for different things, depending on the state, and that's outlined in the report as well. So in some cases, as I mentioned, that single head leading body, as Maine, for example, is the Commissioner of Education. In New Mexico, he is the Secretary of Public Education. In North Dakota and in Wisconsin, the leading head is called the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. So the full report goes into detail on the governance model for these states, including the structure, the responsibilities, and the reporting hierarchy. So there's a lot of information within this report. We drill down on each of those four states, as I mentioned. We talk a little bit about New Mexico, and New Mexico being a state that actually converted back in 2003 from having a state board of education that was a governance entity, that was a policy-making entity. And they changed that so that the State Board of Education is now advisory only. And that's the only state that actually converted. So that information is also in your report. So we also researched and looked into potential benefits and challenges of restructuring a model like this. Some of the benefits include streamlined decision-making. With authority resting with a single head, perhaps decisions can be made more quickly, greater accountability, or clear executive responsibility with a single point of authority, governance consistent with other agencies within the state, uniform governance, making interagency coordination easier, greater flexibility in leadership appointments with the hiring, efficiency in crisis management, perhaps, action and ability in emergencies. So those are potentially some of the benefits, but of course, there's potential challenges with related to changing the governance structure, such as loss of independent oversight and public voice, essentially reducing independent public oversight of educational policy, reduction of broader perspectives that come with having a full board with policy-making authority. Another challenge potentially could be reduced stakeholder representation. So loss of the broad perspectives at the table with respect to policy making, policy changes, governor's terms, legislative resistance, and increased burden on the commissioner. So those are potentially some of the challenges that we determined. So as Ingrid mentioned, this was data and information and research that we conducted based on information that was publicly available, and we're happy to answer any questions. I'd like to move on to recommendations before we move on to and so the recommendation, of course, would be to leverage the current board expertise, engage the board in the process, provide historical context, provide insight, best practices. So that would be the number one recommendation to your expertise. And then, of course, establishing a timeline for transition. Statutes and state board of education bylaws would have to be revised. Developing a communications strategy and plan with regular updates in various channels, and monitoring and evaluating post-implementation. So establishing performance indicators, using findings to refine models, so those are the recommendations that came out of our research, and I'm sure there may be questions, and I'm happy to answer anything or clarify anything from the report.
I have more comments. The main question I have is, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? In 2000, you change things. And I know that it said research highlights that the single executive leaderships supported by the advisory board events for greater efficiency, accountability, strategic development. Nowhere does it say anything about student outcomes. To me, the whole focus of a government policy, I think that's student achievement. The state is not ready for it. If we were failing, the state it has to. I looked up where we stand. I think we will know where we stand in the situation. One of the indicators of 2025 school year, they can start emails. They don't just use financial outcomes. Academic performance, test score, safety, class size, credentials. And just if you indulge me, I just want to read the small piece of how compared to if you want, if they include Washington. That's Connecticut has the second best school system in the United States, boasting the second best act in the country. In addition, around 6.6% of Connecticut public schools are in the top 700 public schools nationwide, the sixth highest percentage. On top of that, the state has the third highest share of students who receive 3 or higher AP exam. Connecticut also takes time in the classroom each year for both teachers and students with the 8th best ratio in the country. Another area where Connecticut stands out is safety. Constitution state is one of the 70 states that require regular audits of school safety. Additionally, Connecticut has the lowest prevalence of illegal drugs on school property, the second lowest youth incarceration rate, and the 6th lowest share of students who have carried any kind of weapons on school property. So when I look at the states that have gone to change one of the force, they all rank below Connecticut on student health. And then the report, where you drilled it down, says that following a comprehensive analysis and comparison of various states' education quality structure, New Mexico appears to be the most comparable example. They suggested as we comparable among New Mexico ranks 51st in the United States, last in student achievement. This is not development model that I see. We continue to be a state that we are. Furthermore, New Mexico adopted their current model nearly a quarter of a century ago. It seems to be in response to a 10-member board that experienced difficulty coming to consensus on educational decisions. That does not seem to be coming to consensus. So again, my question is, what are we going from? And finally, they let's go at 6 years, 19. I'd like to keep on this. So the disadvantages that you have on page 33 are huge, and they outweigh the benefits. Well, in my opinion, they don't even address. So I think the way to go really is to figure out all the areas that need change. If so, and we work together to figure out what are the areas that would make decisions to be
So if I can just clarify one thing. When we compared Connecticut to New Mexico, it was strictly just because New Mexico is the only state that actually converted the state board of education in an advisory capacity to a governing capacity with the same audit. That's the only comparison.
I wasn't suggesting that you.
I just wanted to.
That's a way.
Kevin, you make a good point. My question, let me just throw this out there before these questions which I know are burning in the minds. Do we have a choice in this? Because, you know, I know that this law was developed by a retiring legislator. It did not have, you know, and he was on his way out the door, and it was ramrodded through. I thought this whole study was a study to see which was best, but it seems to me from my reading is that we don't have a choice. It's going to be done.
Well, the charge that the commissioner was given was to develop a plan. And it wasn't to do an analysis of whether or not it's the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. But I mean, just to be clear, the status now is the plan is with the General Assembly. And so they have it. And if they decide that they're going to take legislative action, that's up to them. And if there's a bill that's raised, we will follow that bill and monitor its progress. as it makes its way through the legislative session, and members of this board certainly are able to go and testify before the legislature when it has its public hearing.
This is going to begin in the education committee.
Well, they've already raised a concept. It does not have a bill number or any language yet, but they raised a concept bill and act affecting the State Board of Education or something like that.
Yeah, I would accept that. I have thanks for the report. I have a sort of interesting conceptual question that's related to said. So this it's hard for me to interpret this report. Charge, really, as you say, to evaluate the approach, the right approach. Charge was to do some research and come up with a plan, change, right? So when I read it, I guess I can't tell. It seems as though the writers of the report, this research didn't really have the scope to actually make a recommendation about whether we should do this or not. But rather, we're charged with saying, here's some pluses and minuses, but independent of that, this is how we should do it. That was my read of what your purpose of this document was. Is that accurate?
Very close, yes. So we were charged with to do the evaluation, the research across all states, what the models look like, what the governance look like, what is the interest of the particular governing body. And based on what we learned from the research, that these are some of the challenges, these are some of the implications. And based on that is, if you were to move forward with that, this is the things that you need to consider. In addition to that is the mitigation of what could happen, because we learned that through the research. And as my colleague mentioned, New Mexico, and if you read the history of New Mexico, all the challenges that the state went through in order to get to the place where they were, and the multiple commissioners that they went through. So that was the purpose of the report. We wanted to make sure that you were the commissioner, because I think that, we need to be clear when we receive the charge, that the commissioner was aware of the landscape in addition to challenges, implications, and also possibility of what a plan might look like if the legislation move forward.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. It's really it's not say that it's research. Alan decided that it didn't seem. There actually would have been no way for you to really say that.
Oh, correct, because of the new, exactly, the questions that we needed to answer. We based our report on the questions that we needed to answer. We added a section in the report, and you will see it, about the unique position of Connecticut. Legislatively, right now, we review legislation, how many times the state board is mentioned, how many times the commissioner is mentioned. So there is a legislative education platform that need to come into play in order to understand for legislators what is the role of the state board and the role of the commissioner, because they intermingle the roles, positions, and responsibilities through legislation that is enacted. Sometimes they give the power to the commissioner, sometimes indicate the State Board of Education. We added that in the report because if the legislators decide to move this forward, they need to pay close attention to all the legislative language they need to change in order for that to happen.
So I have one. You weren't asked this question in charge. What's the research? What do you actually think we should do? You haven't asked that. So I thought I would ask now.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I will be hesitant to answer that because we were not asked to do that research. So, but yes, so let me, what it was mentioned today, how I think that is, what I do, I observe and I build relationships. The question is, what was the need? What was the inset? What said the beginning? Why did this need to happen? I would like that question to be answered first. why did this needed to happen? Because when a report is asked, there's a beginning. Then when that is, based on that, we now are going to look into and engage a dialogue of why it needed to happen, what is not happening, and how do we make it better for everyone involved. If we are placed second in the nation, what are the things that we need to address? From good to great, basically, if I'm going to count this work. But the reality is, why the request, why the need, and that is to me what it needs to be answered. I said every single board meeting back there, watching the interaction of the members of the board and the relationship. I think it's you need as a board, without answering your question, I cannot step away from the neutrality of the role that I represent at the State Education Resource Center.
Somebody else. Then, Kristen.
I appreciate that you executed the scope of work that you were executed. I just want to affirm what my colleagues so far have raised. It's the starting point that it seems very prescriptive. That it was not about how do we strengthen, etc. The challenges that you highlighted are very significant. And it strikes me, in my experience with the State Department of Education, that I can't think of any professional working in any school and among the team would necessarily approach something with a very prescriptive outcome that wasn't grounded in what would be best for the students, parents, and professionals in the industry.
I will echo what my colleagues have said, and I guess further, we're talking that thrive government's model that someone can things better than what we're doing now. You don't even have reciprocity with certification in some of these states, so I think you could agree that how they certify teachers is on par with how we certify teachers. I'm not really inclined to want to adopt their leadership style or their governance style. But my comment really is for more for people in the public or the legislators who might be considering this, as you said, that it is a conceptual idea now in committee. A secondary research report, what you did, because that is your charge, in no way provides the nuanced information that is needed to understand how different state boards of education operate. I was privileged to attend the NASB new member interview last year, and I was in a room with brand new board members from all across the country, and we had extensive conversation for hours about how our boards were similar, how they were different, the composition, all of the things that go into the different governance structure. And in several hours of conversation that was both formal and informal, lunches, dinners, breaks, whatever, I learned far more than that would be helpful than what is in this report. Because this is just what's publicly available, and the devil is in the detail. And unless you have interviewed people within the process and have those conversations, don't really understand what it is like. And so I would urge anyone that is considering reading this report up or taking action on this report to remember that this was done based off of information that is available websites, and there was no interviews and no focus groups. There's a lot more detailed information that goes into this. That's not a part of this report. No fault of yours. You did what your charge was, and what your charge was, you executed the report
But man, there's so much more that goes into this and what's in it.
Anything else?
Agreeing with my colleagues as well. As I hold it as a new board and also that my uncle world, that's education, but caregiving. This is deja vu all over again. It's something that's not similar to what we're dealing with immunizations and medicines right now. You know, for me, when I did the background research, two of the states I believe we do have reciprocity in Massachusetts, who have intentionally not done this model and have maintained the structure similar to Canada because of some of the work. And also, not
I will add voice to what my colleagues have said as well, and would hope that as the legislature evolves their concept, that they would hear what was said here today with regards to let us hear what is the issues that prompted this legislation and how we can systematically address those rather than going in for a full-scale vision on what state board education looks like versus many classrooms.
Okay, Ingrid and Marjorie, I'm mad at you.
Don't shoot the messenger. We will keep coming. We will keep coming.
Love you both. But Laura, where do we go from here? If we want to fight this individually as board members or whatever.
Sure, like I said, as soon as it's assigned a bill number, I will notify you. I'll notify the full board. I don't know when their next meeting is, and I don't know when the public hearing is, so we're gonna have to play a little of this by ear. But the public hearings will mostly take place over the month of March. We're guaranteed that, and so those are obviously in the legislative office building. They do have Zoom options. You can submit testimony, you can testify in person. Because you are heads of the state agency, you are considered public officials, so you would be able to testify within the first hour, unless the commissioner takes up the whole hour, which happens a lot. But yeah, so that's just where we'll need to see what the limit looks like. We'll need to see, I mean, we really have no idea what the steps are, because we just don't know what the legislative language is gonna look like, but it should be out relatively shortly.
I'll just say that the things you brought up are the questions we ask a lot by just about every piece of legislation. Across many, you'll always get the benefit. I'm not speaking to this about when we go over and when we're how to respond to the legislation, I suddenly ask myself the question, what is the problem that is being solved? We don't really get that when we move forward. But as Laura mentioned, the report and talking to a couple of legislators and whatever the next steps are, and I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Stay for.
Okay.